Are you a GP considering a move to Australia? Now, before you pack your bags, let's discover the 3 key drawbacks that may make you think twice about practicing GP down under. Now, this video is the counterpart to the Living the Dream video about the 3 reasons why you would really want to come to live in Australia and work here as a GP. And the 3 reasons I'm going to give you here are going to be in order of importance. Number 1 is that everything wants to kill you. Now, when most people think about Australia, they think about spiders and snakes, but it is actually much worse. And there are probably creatures here that you have never heard about that also want to kill you. Now, one of these creatures that I'm talking about is this super cute blue-ringed octopus. And what it says here is its venom is 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide, and this golf ball-sized powerhouse packs enough venom to kill 26 humans within minutes. So effectively, it looks like a little octopus that has beautiful little blue rings on it. And if it stings you, you actually don't even feel that it has stung you. But what happens is that you very quickly go into respiratory distress, and if you don't get the anti-venom, you will actually die. There are also sharks out there, and I try not to think about sharks because I did really get into surfing ever since coming to Australia. Of course, you have things like the box jellyfish, which if you get stung will probably make you wish you were dead because it is that painful. And finally, don't forget about the saltwater crocodiles in case you decide to have a beautiful, lovely dip in one of those waterfall lakes in the Northern Territories. And obviously, we haven't talked about the snakes and the spiders, of which there are many in Australia, and they also want to kill you. So if you are coming to Australia, make sure that you catch up on the anti-venom guidelines. And if you think what I just said was a joke, let's go into the therapeutic guidelines and put venom in here, which is what I just did. And you can see that there are 25 results. Venomous fish species, clinical presentation of penetrating injuries from venomous fish, anti-venom, snake venom coagulopathy. Let's go into the anti-venom. Okay, so this is specifically for the stonefish, which I haven't really spoken about. And from what I understand, a stonefish is one of those creatures that doesn't really look like a fish, so it's not kind of swimming around and you can see it. It's basically laid there in the sand and you accidentally step on it. And it's super painful and it looks like you need an anti-venom for it. Now, number 2 is you're actually not making more money here in Australia. And I mean specifically as a GP. This has been discussed in detail in a lot of the Facebook groups where agencies are effectively saying, come to Australia, you'll make loads of money. And then GPs are kind of like, you know what? It's not actually more money. Now, I've been really open and honest about money in this video here where I compared a locum salary to a GP salary in the UK. And I'll leave the link in the description below. But in Australia, when you get your first paycheck, you're like, wow, that is so much money. It is so much more than in the UK. But what you have to factor in here is that in Australia, as a GP, you are pretty much a contractor. So like a locum GP almost. So you bill the patient or you bill Medicare, the practice will take a percentage from that total billing and you get the rest. But from that, you have to pay tax. You have to pay superannuation, your pension. You have to put money aside for sick leave or annual leave because that is not part of the fee structure at all. And because GPs by and large do make good money both in the UK and in Australia, you're probably in the highest tax bracket if you are working full time. And so you want to take at least 40+% away straight off the bat. You probably do want a pension unless money is not an issue for you. What I mean by that is that you're from a super wealthy family and you don't have to worry about money, which probably isn't the case for most of us. And thirdly, well, you can't just work straight every single week of the year. You probably want to take some time off. And if you're not working because you have your time off, no one's paying you for that. So you have to effectively put money aside that you take when you are on your annual leave, which is a bit of an adjustment because effectively in the UK, for instance, or if you're in a salaried position, if you go on holiday, it's fine because you still get your paycheck. But then here you're on holiday and you're like, oh my God, I'm not getting paid for being here. So that's something that you kind of just have to make work in your own mind. And then finally, you really have to understand the MBS billing system to make good money. Because if you are just billing straightforward 23s, which is a time-based consultation, then you will be missing out on all of the other numbers that you can bill or all of the other services that you can provide for your patients that makes sense financially for yourself and for the practice. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description of a video that I made detailing the 3 courses that I would attend as a new GP and especially a new GP in Australia. And one of them is an MBS billing course. So that is something that you may or may not want to look into. Now, the third reason why you may not want to come to Australia is there is this saying, East or West, home is best. And this was discussed in detail in one of the online GP Facebook groups, where effectively people were talking about how in the UK, because the National Health health system is in a difficult situation at the moment, and a lot of GPs and doctors are leaving the UK in general to work in other countries like in Australia, where working conditions are kind of better. And by and large, I think they are, apart from the things that we are talking about obviously here. And the discussion was, well, we will have loads of GPs now coming from the UK to Australia. So that should be great because there is also a GP shortage in Australia. And one of the more experienced members of the Facebook group wrote, what we are often seeing is that a lot of the GPs from the UK who end up staying in Australia are actually IMGs from the UK, like myself, international medical graduates. So I studied in Poland, but I did all of my training in the UK. And then from the UK, I came to Australia. And I'm really happy in Australia and I want to stay here. But what they were seeing is that a lot of the GPs that were born and raised in the UK, did their medical studies in the UK and have all of their family in the UK, they come to Australia because they are tempted, because it's a really cool place to work and a really great experience. But over time, they start to miss their family. People may become sick at home, and it's very difficult to fly back in from Australia to the UK and from the UK to Australia. It's also very expensive. And so I have noticed that a lot of GPs that have come a few years ago, they're starting to think about going back to the UK because they miss their home effectively. Again, I have a lot of GP friends here who have come from the UK and that love it here and that don't want to move and are potentially even in the position to bring in their aging parents from the UK to stay here in Australia with them. On the flip side of that, I have met a lot of GPs who have gone back to the UK after having spent some time here in Australia. And often, unfortunately, what happens is because they've had such a great experience here in Australia, they become what are called ping pong poms. So they basically are bouncing back and forth, back and forth. And I met a GP once who was in her 50s and she came to Australia when she was kind of in her 30s. And again, she spent a few years in Australia, then went back to the UK, then came back to Australia. She was like, the biggest mistake I ever made in my life was actually coming to Australia in the first place because she saw a different way of life. She saw something that she really loved. And yet she was taken away from her family who was in the UK that kind of needed her care at that point, which was a little bit upsetting, to be honest, because you have this person in their 50s that are reflecting on the fact that they wish they had never come to Australia in the first place. So that is something that I would be mindful of. If you are in the UK or a different country and you're not from there originally, you've just kind of traveled around like myself, then I think coming to Australia is a great idea. And if you look at the Living the Dream video, it's really beautiful here. And the work is much better than in the UK, to be honest. And even though I say the pay is not much better, it actually is a little bit better if you get a sense of how the system works. But realistically, if you are born and raised in the UK, you have all of your family, all of your support network in the UK, and you think, listen, I can't do this NHS thing anymore. I'm going somewhere else. I'm coming to Australia. I would strongly consider your options because are there ways to make things work back home rather than just jumping ship? I mean, if you need to jump ship and you want to jump ship, you can. But again, I just want to make sure that you are making an informed decision and not acting out of spite or hastily. Right, well, have I forgotten something? Is there something else that I haven't covered here? Another reason why you wouldn't want to come to Australia to work as a GP. Now, feel free to leave a comment below and thanks so much for watching this video. If you do want to see the top 3 reasons to come to Australia, well, just stay till the end of this video and the video will pop up for you. Otherwise, good luck.